Hello, Ryan.
Hello, Rachel.
How you doing?
I'm feeling so great. I've just had a big drink of chiggy blood, and so I'm in top form for this discussion. How about yourself?
I've just had my nice glass of whiskey.
Oh, you're drinking whiskey. I'm drinking chiggy blood.
Mm-hmm.
So you're drunk then. Hear that, everyone? My wife, she's drunk for this pod. She's we're hanging loose for one of the big episodes of Space Above and Beyond. Rachel is she's as they say, off her tits on the alcohol here, and of whiskey. Hey, do you actually like whiskey or bourbon? Do you like either?
I tend to gravitate towards clear spirits over darker ones. But,
Okay.
yeah.
So what is the taste difference for you there? Because I don't drink any alcohol, so I don't know, like, why a clear spirit is tastier to you than a darker one. Like, what would you describe the experience to someone who doesn't drink either? Who only drinks blood?
I don't think this is particularly useful, but it's what first comes to mind of clear alcohol doesn't often have much taste to it.
Really?
Whereas darker alcohols tend to have more flavor and punch.
And you don't like that?
No.
You do. What is it that Dan Aykroyd has to remove from his vodka? Isn't it like glycol or something or other? And and that makes it crisper.
Yeah, like
he's like, my Crystal Skull vodka, it has no glycol in it. All these other vodkas have glycol or whatever.
Almost entirely just like the alcohol taste that is in alcohol beverages. Like it just tastes like that to me.
Oh.
Whereas like with whiskey you get different notes and different flavors that come through. Like it is a more robust, full flavor. Like think
is it Yum Yum?
Think lemonade compared to ginger ale.
Okay.
That kind of sort of thing.
Right, and I prefer lemonade over ginger ale, so that is the podcast. Thank you all so much for listening to
I did a horrible job with
this
that.
episode's
My apologies.
Podcast in which Rachel explains alcoholic beverages to me, a non-drinker. And next week we're going to hear all about Guinness and why it's great and why you should crack eggs into it. And so,
gross.
Yum Yum.
No, that does.
Well, Guinness? You don't like Guinness?
No, I don't. And that leans into my thing of like the darker alcohols have a stronger taste.
Sorry we lost all the Irish listeners to our Space Above and Beyond discussions where we talk about episodes of Space Above and Beyond, the Sci-Fi series, the one-season darling. We are watching it. Rachel, you are going over it for the first time, and for me, this is a rewatch of the series, but anyone is welcome to listen to this discussion because we aren't really going outside of the realms of what is the obvious stuff. What is beyond this episode is yet to be watched for us on this pod, so we are good for spoilers. So if you're watching this for the first time, or you're an experienced fan of Space Above and Beyond, well, buckle up because we're talking about one of the most acclaimed episodes of the series, one of the high hitters. Often it is a point of contention of if this is the best episode or who monitors the birds or one or two others along the way that we have yet to get to. But
how many more episodes of the show have we got left?
Well, you can tell us because you're going to tell us what episode we're actually talking about today and what number it is.
It's number 15. The Angriest Angel. McQueen, a grounded ex-member of the elite fighter team, the Angry Angels, insists that he is allowed to fly a dangerous mission to destroy the Chig's newest spacecraft.
So there are only 23 episodes in the season, so we are getting much closer towards the end. We're past the halfway point, but the Angriest Angel. So in the last episode discussion, you thought that this was going to be an episode that I would also assume this would be the plot, that it is perhaps a remaining Angry Angel, and it's a story about them, and that is what it is, because there was only one survivor of the Angry Angels, and it is McQueen.
You are not fit to fly, Colonel.
Sir, I have not been presented with the opportunity to demonstrate to the contrary, sir.
I don't have the time to let you go through qualifications, and I don't need a damn physical to know you don't have your sea legs. This mission means everything. And I refuse to jeopardize it because you're taking it personally.
What an abundance of gifts we were given from the writers with this episode, because it is so crystal clear that they know, that they at the time knew how great McQueen is as a character and how capable the actor is at portraying this, because there were many moments when I was looking at this today that I stroked my chin and said, this is machismo awesome. And usually that type of thing I find to be repelling in media, especially my sci-fi shows. Like, I don't always like my gruff guy who's doing the push-ups and he's looking out the window and he's like, I'm gonna kill them, those bastards.
Like
and
the where
testosterone
being Top
filled.
Gun in space.
I'm not often a fan of that, but the character of McQueen is so charismatic, and James Morrison's performance
rounded out.
And James Morrison as an actor, he's
amazing.
Yes, he's amazing, and we'll be praising him throughout the entire discussion, but he plays this with an edge to it, yet somewhere in amongst it all, you know that he
has a heart.
Well, no, the actor grasps the sillier nature of the show as well, because there is a level of silliness to all of the stuff that goes on here, but he doesn't let that overwhelm, but he isn't playing it so serious every time. Like, there's moments of levity that is here with McQueen, especially with Ross. That's why we love their relationship so much, because that's the softer side. But I just really like how James Morrison plays this character that could easily be a caricature, and he plays it with the full 3 dimensions, and a part of that is also a minor undercurrent of playing into the silliness that's at heart here, but he plays it so well that it turns around into you buying it.
Yeah.
You get it. You go, yes.
His decisions are very deliberate, and he picks and chooses his moments to do the different things that he's doing with the character, and playing those moments in a way that just brings out all of these notes that are in the script and adding to it, so it's greater than the sum of its parts.
So my overall relationship with the Angriest Angel is this is one of the ones that I also hold near and dear to my heart. It's what I remember the Chiggy von Richthofen storyline. The previous one I didn't remember as strongly as this. So this is what I remembered. And I knew when we discussed the last episode that this was another 2-parter. But I did want to lead you astray a little bit to see how much of an influence knowing or not knowing a 2-parter would have on you, because the previous one, it did have the to be continued, but the previous 2-parter, but Never No More last week or last time didn't have that. So it was fairly self-contained with some loose threads to pick up. And
I think then it's like, we could continue this next episode or in a couple of episodes.
Yeah.
Because sometimes they have done that with Space Above and Beyond, where there's like a loose thread that they go back to.
Like the silicates,
Yes.
which even here, they go back to Elroy L. So I love this episode. Now, this isn't my personal favorite episode. Even on this watch, there have been some others that I just prefer more, but this is, at this point, this and Who Monitors the Birds, on drastically different executions, demonstrating the strengths of Space Above and Beyond. This is the show firing on all cylinders.
It's one of the best.
So, what did you think? First time watching, what did you get out of this?
Yeah, I thought it was one of the best episodes of the show that we've watched so far. Like, everything is tight. It's all pristine, high quality, no fat, delivers on what it promises. It is extremely clear with the story that it wants to tell, and we'll get into that.
I have been saying this a lot on the Space Above and Beyond discussions, but episodes, when you boil down the plot, just the narrative of, okay, this is what the episode is about in terms of pushing the things from A to B to C, are very simple. The Chiggy, von Richthofen stuff isn't that complicated. It isn't really that even deep or nuanced, but what is all of the character stuff, and that is what elevates this so strongly. Because actually thinking about this, I was like, oh my god, the silicate, we have to mention the silicate, and we have to mention the chaplain in that scene, and we have to also mention that McQueen has had a wife, and this character died, and they took care of Chicky, and there are lots of elements, but when you do look at it, it is a simple story about McQueen getting back in the saddle to kill the main antagonist, and then that is it. But what boosts all of that is all of the amazing work that is put into this rather stoic man. This man that we have very much loved because he is the most competent character, the wise character. He is somebody who, even with all of that said, has a grit to him. He has a legacy and a past that we have touched upon at many points, but there are also things that we haven't touched, like him being a former Angry Angel and how he isn't allowed to fly. We have touched it, but we haven't explored it at all that much deeper until now. And so there's a lot of catharsis had. There's a lot of joy and pumping of the fists and gritting of the teeth in excitement to see the next scene, because each scene has McQueen in it, and each scene with McQueen in this show for us is exemplary. It's always top tier stuff. So they've really rewarded us as viewers of, you like McQueen? He's a whole episode. Nothing but McQueen. He's working out at the beginning, but Vi candy for us.
Yep.
He's jacked.
Monologue.
I don't give a damn for destiny. Anyone worth a chig's ass will take responsibility for asking themselves, then answering, who am I and what's the point? My name is Colonel Tyrus Cassius McQueen, but I know nothing of who I am. The answer, I feel, is near.
Just to pitch it over to you, when the episode opens up, it immediately tells you that this is going to be a story focused from McQueen's point of view, let alone it's going to be a McQueen episode. So what was your reaction to that?
Fuck yeah.
That's it. Just a fuck yeah. But when it does present that to you, what are your expectations? What are you hoping for, and what did you get in return?
I am hoping that it's all about him. I'm like, I don't want him to be sharing the stage with anybody else. I want it to be about him and his experience in the war and him dealing with being their commanding officer, because we've seen how they've grown closer to him and how he is attached to them but also distant. And I got all of that and more.
Before going into the Angriest Angel, how would you describe what you love about the McQueen character? And then after having watched the Angriest Angel, how has that developed or even changed?
He knows who he is and what he is, and that's reinforced in this episode.
Very succinct way to put it. That is very much what I enjoy about him and Ross. They are the older members of this ensemble, and they have lives that they've lived, and you feel that from just those actors' faces. Just they look like people who have gone through it, and yet they have a sensibility to them that perseveres. And yeah, McQueen knows who he is, but that doesn't mean he can't be challenged. That doesn't mean he can't grow and change, because he does throughout this. There are moments of him being challenged and him having to overcome the perceptions that are bestowed upon him from outsiders, and ones that he has on himself, these insecurities about himself that he has to push through. And one of the things that I really like about McQueen as a character, it's actually quite interesting, because we talked about this with Vance, and when we have Vance in episodes, that they're Marines, and Vance and you were worried that would her being a woman matter at all? Like, how much are they going to play up that or not play to that? And we oftentimes mention, like, one of the things that we do like about Vanson is how she maintains her femininity. And while still being the hard-ass military lady, one of the things...
She's a female commander who doesn't try and be less female to be a commander.
But I look at McQueen as he's an extremely masculine character. And I actually find that a very appealing thing about him. He is the father figure to the group, and he is almost...
Especially to Cooper,
and he's almost the brother figure to Ross. And he just has that extreme masculinity that you would expect from an environment like this, but it is very different to Ali Ermey in The Pilots, where he had that masculinity and he had to send these men off to war, but there wasn't that level of nuance or connection to it. While here, there's this whole episode dissecting the McQueen character, what makes him tick, what makes him move and operate through this world. Like, how can he keep doing what he does? Like, what makes him keep doing what he does? Because he's also a character with some existential and nihilistic outlooks on the world as well. There are many moments throughout this season that we've seen where he has that angle to him, but he still is driven. So what drives him? And this here, the I have to face off against Chicky von Richthofen is an obvious one, but that is just the vehicle that drives forward and pushing along all of the actual things that motivate McQueen to keep going.
I want to take maybe a little bit of a different tact with this one, because just because of stuff that I've been thinking about recently and mulling over a little bit of what makes a good story. Been doing a little bit of research into this, and I thought we could discuss some questions that you should be able to answer about a story for it to be clear and of quality, because I think you can do that with this episode. And one of the first questions is like, who is it about? And maybe starting there with what we know of McQueen and where we start with him.
Well, we start with him working out.
Yeah, that he's very much a physical person. He is in his body, but that doesn't mean that he's not thinking. Like, because often there is that sort of false dichotomy of somebody who's buff is brainless.
I look at the very beginning of this as a man who is giving himself purpose, but he is still questioning what his purpose is currently. So he is putting all of these questions and things that he's interrogating about himself and the general malaise of what he's going through and channeling it into Chiggy. He just has to put it somewhere. So he's physically training himself for the ultimate battle against the foe. We often think about in the Red Baron type stories that we see in media that the Red Baron character is never really a character, not oftentimes, but they are...
It's a force.
It's a force, a metaphor, or an allegory. And for McQueen, it is, yes, he will shoot this thing that is the best of theirs, and he will win because he is the best of ours. But it is this, just this force, as you say, that is ever encroaching upon the good things that are around him, because we get later in the episode the death of Winslow, and that was the character he actually connected with here. That was the one that reached out to him in many different ways. At first, in a way that was over the line and joking, but throughout the episode, she kept coming to him and kept offering things and was actually there to see him as a person, which he often doesn't allow himself to be seen as.
He's not a person, he's a Marine.
When this war ends, and you go back to raise money for charity, and you're eating dogs at Wrigley, and you go back to Mayberry, I'm still going to be out here, waiting for the next one. That's why I'm here. That's what I'm good for.
The next question is, what do they want?
What does he want, Rachel? What do you think?
He wants to be the best Marine. He wants to be successful and triumphal. And it goes back to something that he said to Cooper quite a while ago now, I think, of like, I'm a Marine to show them that tanks can be, and that I want to be so good they can't ignore me, and to overcome the prejudices within the Marine Corps. I think that's a big part of it, as well as like the stuff that he says in this episode.
He doesn't want to be lesser than.
No.
And what you say about the chick stuff is always there. I mean, not the chick stuff, the tank stuff. Tank. I mean to say tank. Sorry, there's a lot of lingo in the show. The tank stuff. He thinks about it like that, but here in this episode, one of the things that's really underlined that we haven't even really thought about deeply, but it has been in our peripheries, is his disability. He has been grounded. To be somebody like him, who was the man who was flying in space,
that
shooting
was his
out.
Purpose
that was who he was
a long time.
That's what, and so the Chigs taking that away from him would really hurt, but he's having to play the leader who stays at the base, watching them all fly off. And how does that affect you as a leader, where you are sending these people off to your death knowing that you couldn't do what they do because of a physical impediment that's stopping you? So you see that gnawing away at him throughout this. So a large thing of what he is going through is he doesn't want to be lesser than. So he needs to prove that he isn't that. So he's going to do something reckless. He's going to tell them to take the thing out and let me fight the bad guy.
Ahead in my question.
Oh, see, I'm jumping ahead because it's that engaging. I already want to talk about the relationship between him and Ross.
Because the next two questions are, why can't they get it?
Mm-hmm.
And what do they do about that?
Well, he can't get it because of all of these practical purposes that could be happening to him once he gets this chip removed from his head.
Yeah, it's like it is his disability and the implant that he has that
is helping him, but it would get damaged if he tries to fly in the military-grade ships and the G-Force and all of the technical mumbo-jumbos that they list off here. All very valid technical mumbo-jumbos, but yes, and then what does he do, Rachel? What does he do?
He kicks fucking ass and gets himself flight ready.
A character trait that I always am a sucker for, a real you will knock me over pretty easily with this if it's one of our mains, is a one of our leads being very much a person driven by sheer willpower.
You love an underdog.
Not just an underdog, but
like
somebody
that specific
with
brand of underdog. Like it's not quite the right phrase for it.
Because why does McQueen somehow be able to overcome the after effects that could stop him from flying? Sheer force of will, man. There's just
that little falter that he has when he's about to get in the cockpit.
And when he comes back and he has the blood coming out of his ear, and you know that it fucked him up, but he still did it anyway because...
And he keeps walking.
And because he's the best.
I know now with certainty who I am, but I'll be damned if I'll ever know the point. And now, all I can ask is who was he? And who was she? And what was the point?
Why doesn't that work, and how does it end?
Well, why doesn't it work is a classic Space Above and Beyond, where they got what they wanted, but it really wasn't all they needed.
No. They get what they want, but not what they need. He gets to
drink the Chiggy's blood.
Yeah.
He gets to drink that, and he fills it up, but...
It's like the process within the episode of him faltering, and it's extremely difficult for him to get to flight condition. And he doesn't even get to prove it because of the timeline of the episode. And then it does end with him being successful in his outcome of, like, he wants to destroy Chiggy, but what he needs is to feel like the best Marine. And he doesn't get that need met.
He also needs...
It's not something that he can achieve and be satisfied.
Well, he also needs to accept human connection, because he constantly throughout the episode has his mantra about how he questions himself and he can give the answer. And that even ties back into his relationship with his wife and about being a father and how he knew the answer to those questions. And so that's where he is now. And it's understandable why he comes from the place he comes from, but you can still see that it hurts him.
Yeah.
And that even though that's a reality for who he is currently, it doesn't mean it makes him happy.
Yeah, his
is
acceptance only goes so far.
Yeah, and so we are left with the very wonderful formula of a Space Above and Beyond character-driven episode where the person that we are following gets the thing that they want. Shane finds out why the silicates killed her family, and then she kills the silicates, but cycle of vengeance is still in her head, and the trauma is still there. And Nathan West, right? We had a whole episode about his character journey and about, for him, it's also about finding Kylan, but really that doesn't, even if he does find her, it doesn't fix the deeper issues going on with him. And Cooper Hawkes as well, right? Where he wanted freedom. Yeah. And he got it, and then he decided that's not what I need anymore.
Like, all of these characters are searching for hope in one way or another, and it's all unique. And I connected to that idea because of what West said a couple of episodes ago.
Mm.
And it's just... show's so good.
It is very, very well crafted. There's a thing there's that scene I rather enjoyed where James Morrison got to explode in the bar that I hate. But
saloon doors, though.
But
it has saloon doors.
But he has
How can you not like a set that has saloon doors?
But he has that big explosion when Winslow hit on him, and when was it Cooper called him his guy? Wang. Mm-hmm. Wang called him a guy.
I need a guy. It's like, I'm not your guy.
And that explosion scene where he goes off and he tells them who he is and why he's here and what he lives for.
Still be here.
When you go back to this and he lists all of them, really detailed things, but for West, it's just, and you go back to Maysbury. Like, you just go back to where you're from. Like, that's all you've got, by the way.
He knows them. He knows them. He knows what motivates them. And that's part of what makes him a great commander, and it's also what makes you feel devastated for all of them.
But one of the points that I really took away from this, right, because it's him reacting and in part being performative for them and himself, of reinforcing
boundaries,
not just boundaries, but where everybody fits and what they do.
Yes.
And Space Above and Beyond started out doing that. Hey, West is this 1940s type lead. Hey, Vanson is this.
Mm-hmm. And they're just this.
Wang is this. And we knew fairly quickly that, this is going to be a show where they set them up like this so that they can deconstruct them. And that is what this monologue really, really is showing off, is the character of McQueen is trying to say, this is what we all are. This is you. This is what you're going to do after, and this is what you're going to do. And this is what I have been, and this is what I am, and this is what I will be. And yet the episode still is going to take that apart and see if there's any validity to that, and if there's more to the character of McQueen than just that. Even within this singular episode where we've already got to know McQueen for what was it, like 14, 15 episodes?
Yeah, this is 15, I think.
So the show, it's constantly reinforcing what the characters are and are what they were supposed to be, and what they really are, and what more we can do with them. Yeah. It is building stuff up, knocking it down, and building it up again, but in a different design with the pieces that we have. It's still the same pieces, but now we've got a new building out of it, and that's
the anthill.
It's a real anthill type thing. But that scene. Now I know you have a harder time when you're viewing scenes like this at getting, I guess, secondhand embarrassment or cringing or wiggling in your seat when a character, even one you like, has a public meltdown and explosion. So how was this for you?
I was more wiggling when she was hitting on him. That was the point where I was like, no, stop.
But she's horny. She's horny.
Don't,
You know what they say if you haven't had sex in 3 days.
But Vincent is right.
But she's got a 0G room.
No.
Winslow is worried about the neck navel thing. That's something that off-puts her a little.
Yeah. It's just like, how often...
Is it weird if I touch it?
Is it weird if I don't touch it?
Yeah.
Is it a source of pleasure?
Yeah. Oh, don't.
Does it have nerve ending?
Let's talk about tank sexual arousals.
Hey, people have ear sex.
People are into feet. People are into belly buttons. Sure. This is exactly what the Angriest Angel was trying to communicate.
I kind of have a thing for the Colonel, but you know that navel thing in the back of his neck? I don't know. I think I'd be disoriented.
Winslow, McQueen is our commanding officer. It's against regulations for him to be with you. Besides, I don't think that he's ever had anything in his life but the Corps.
Let's discuss Winslow.
Yeah, she dies.
She dies.
She dies.
She's the voice of Sniper Wolf in the Metal Gear Solid. I want to hear more from about Winslow because she was an answer to a problem you had with this series, which was the side characters or those little characters that fill up the Saratoga were always coming in and out, and we never got to know them. And yet when they mourned for them, the show would treat it as if this was an earned emotion, yet for us, the viewers, it was disingenuous and empty because we didn't get any sense of familiarity with any of them. And so Winslow and one or two other little players here and there, but mainly Winslow, filled that vacuum of that complaint.
Yeah,
so
she showed up, she had a character, she was there for several episodes, either, playing a bigger part or not. Sometimes she was just, a part of the 58th with our regular primary characters. And now she's gone.
What did you think of the Winslow character overall, and what did you think about what they did with her throughout the episode?
I like the way that she was similar to some of our characters, but distinct enough. Because sometimes when you get new characters, it can feel like, we can't make them too much like this person. They need to have their thing and their gimmick to make them stand out on their own. But it's just like, no, she has a little bit of this and a little bit of that and her own thing in this way. Because it's just like, that's the way that it works. Especially with how, we see the friendships develop. And it's just like, yes, a certain degree of their friendship is they're stuck together. But some of them get along better than others, right? So it's just like there has to be some basis for the connection and similarities for them to get along with each other. And I like the way that they balance those needs in terms of her character development.
Overall, in this is the final episode she's in. This is the end. She gets killed, as you said, and I would love to hear in a moment what you thought about that death, if you saw it coming, and your overall emotions to it. But I want to hear a bit more about what you thought about her character within this episode, because she was given more time. She was given time to breathe a bit more, and we know that with people like Ross. That's what happened with him, right? He started out as just a guy, and then they gave him a little bit more, and now he's basically one of the main characters of the show. And she could have been going that direction as well. But I want to know what you thought about the beats of her interactions and her placement within this.
Well, I was expecting her to die. Not just because, it's she's a grunt like them, like the rest of the 58th, so she's expendable.
Yes.
But also, even though you try and be very careful about the way that you talk about things in Space Above and Beyond, at one point you used a certain phrase and I was like, oh, she's gonna die.
What was that phrase?
I think it was...
She was cool.
Like, I do think it was something as silly as that. Like, just a small thing where I was like, yeah.
I mean, it's hard because this is a cancelled show. Right? When I refer to any of them in past tense, it also means, like, their story never ends.
Yeah, like, it was a comment that you made about her. And I was just like, oh, just using context clues. Like, you didn't say anything explicit. You didn't spoil it for me. But I went, oh, yeah. That confirms it. I'm like 98% sure she's going to die.
Since she died and you kind of had a feeling, gathered that was going to happen, how did you feel, though?
I felt satisfied in a weird way because I'm like, them getting into the dress uniforms for the funeral finally felt earned. It finally felt like it mattered to me. And they made me feel it, not just showing me them being sad, but actually making me feel sad that this character has died and that these people are dealing with grief yet again.
And for somebody who was actually a close friend of theirs, somebody that they were just having a drink with right before she flew off and died. For myself, what I liked about Winslow was the word I'd use to describe her was adventurous. She had a real adventurous quality to her. She was the one that was
Spice of life,
gung-ho. She was willing to grab life by the horns and just go for it. You know what's something I was thinking about when you were talking about her? She's almost a concoction of a lot of the qualities that make up each of our characters.
Yeah.
She has that rambunctious energy of Cooper. She has that quiet, I will listen to hear what you have to say style of Danfu. Mm-hmm. She has that I can be the leader when it comes for advancing style. She also
has the humor that Wang brings.
And also has that I guess she had that centeredness at times of West as well because he can have that. She almost felt like an amalgamation of a lot of the qualities that made up the other members of the 58. So when you take that away, it's almost like he's a character that is the representation of the 58th, and now we've killed that. Yeah. How does that feel to you, the audience? And not only was she killed, the thing that we have to really mention was she was killed like a dog. She died in the most like pathetic way that you could kill a character in this moment where she ejects the pod, she flies out, and then she gets to look at the Chiggy von Richthofen, fly around, look at her, and just blow her up. She cannot do anything. There's nothing she can do, which is one of the things where you think of a military person, a soldier, a marine, where they're trained to do all of these things to fight back and survive, and there she is in the void of space, looking at this thing that's going to kill her. She was the one who was unwilling to eject in the first place. They told her she had to, and she begrudgingly did it, only to die in a soldier brain that you often see in media, less honorable death. Yeah. She didn't go down fighting. She went down trying to run, basically, and got massacred.
In my head, when I was watching that scene, I wasn't focused on that. I was focused on the lack of mercy and the way that Chiggy is playing with his prey.
Mm-hmm.
That's what stood out to me. from that scene, because it's like, it's so compelling, the fact that they communicate that the pilot is taking glee in shooting this defenseless person down.
He's out there tonight, sending our women, our men, to that cold, dark place. And nothing will stop him until I face the moment.
Before she died, we had that beautiful back and forth between her and McQueen, where she
Talking
comes
in
into
third
a
person, because it's,
because she's a subordinate, and
Yeah.
but where she has to apologize to McQueen, and that's actually reminds me of West, where when he fucks up,
he owns it.
he eventually sucks it up and walks over and owns it, and he's like, I will change, I will get better, and he actually has, which is...
Yeah, he evolves.
Can we just take a little detour for a second? How weird is it that in a 90s sci-fi show like this, we have a character like West, where he's a fuck-up, and then he says, I'm sorry, I'm going to change.
Then he actually does.
That he actually changes.
I was thinking about that, because I was thinking about, weirdly enough, Eric Foreman in that 70s show, about how so often it's like, sorry, I fucked up, Donna. I won't fuck up again. And then it's like, next episode, he's back doing dumb shit, almost exactly the same.
I was going to say, this is a little later, and again, we're both going off different genres and sci-fi, but I often think about you mentioning Gilmore Girls characters. Like, is he the Rory of this show, where it's like, it's always the same fucking idiotic thing that he gets into, and it's like, there's a commentary to be made about characters going in circles around their problems. I mean, that's what Vanson is, right? She's in circles and circles and around her need for revenge, and how it's just hard to break that. But
there's a difference between a cycle and spinning wheels.
that's a great way to put it. But back to the conversation between McQueen and Winslow.
I love the direction in that scene in particular.
Well, there's
like the way that they shoot the interactions between the two characters, and playing with blocking and the sense of space in his quarters. I really enjoy it.
There's so many things that offsets her and you. First, she has to knock on the door, and we just hear the music, and she has to keep knocking until he responds, and then he responds, and then she can come in, and she comes in, and he's got the music blaring, and so she's trying to talk to him, and then she stops, and then she directly asks him, like, can you hear me there? Like, are you able to acknowledge me? And so he turns it off. It's a real power play.
Yeah.
It's all about the power play. You see all the things on the wall that are demonstrating what's really happening here. She sees it too. She sees the footage, the photos of Chiggy up there, and all of these other things that are happening. And she knows, okay, this is eating at him, and it is driving him to do stuff. Okay, let's try and relate to him. And
I came here to mend our relationship. I'm going to use context and my skills as like just a person to try and make this work, because I want to undo the damage that I did, and that's very much what she walks in to do, and trying to sort of sidestep him trying to avoid doing that in a way. Like, he doesn't really want to acknowledge it. Like, he just wants to gloss over it, but she digs deeper, and he accepts that invitation to think about his past,
and to open up. That's the thing. Open up,
which is not something that we've really seen him do with a member of the 58th.
Cooper is the closest, and that's because they have something in common. They both are tanks. So I will tell you about what it's like to be a tank.
I feel very differently about those interactions, because it's like, in those, it's almost more about what McQueen can give to Cooper to make him a good Marine, not about him sharing something about him as a person, which is what it is in this scene.
Well, let's break it apart. We get McQueen lore and backstory. He was married at one point. There was a time in his life where being this badass Marine that we know him to be was not the only thing he had.
Yeah.
And there was a scene earlier where Winslow at the bar asked him if he's been married, and he replied that he had been married. Yes.
Yeah.
And you didn't accept that. I was like, he just said he's been married, right? And you're like, no, he said he wasn't. And I'm like, I think he just said he's been married. And then we do get to follow up on that. So for myself, what I got a lot out of this. One of the things that I really appreciated here, and it's also a tricky thing because I can see this being something that makes one roll their eyes and say, yuck, but this is a show that is dealing with bigotry, racism, and the tanks, a sci-fi allegory for that. They are a means to an end to explore the bigotry that humans have against other humans, and so we get
the
divisions that we create for ourselves, and how silly it is, and how mean it is, and we get to find out that he has been married, and his wife wasn't really. She got told what it would be like to be married to a tank and all the stuff that follows with that.
But the experience.
But she was not ready for the experience of the bigotry that would be thrown his way routinely, and she took it personally and took it as something on her, and that is. This is not just an American thing, but we know from American media especially that this is something we know happened with a lot of people of color,
interracial couples,
African Americans in particular, segregation and so on and so forth. We often think that, and that, I mean, we have stuff like that as all universal, and that's happened here in Australia as well. But this is an American show. And it's clearly evoking that.
Yes.
It's clearly making you think about that. And I appreciate that this type of bigotry has been woven into the series because it has been exploring many different types of racism.
Yeah.
Within itself.
And discrimination. Broadly.
Discrimination. Yes, as a whole. So I know that sometimes in these sci-fi shows, when they have the this alien is this racial allegory, or this robot, or this
species equals this real thing,
it can make one cringe, and I understand why, and I have felt it many a times myself. One of the reasons, at least for my displeasure with that, is
shortcut,
simplified, and they only hone in on a few or mainly one type of talking point when it comes to bigotry.
Yeah, it's like you're setting up this whole thing. There's more than one thing to say about it.
And so with McQueen's backstory, I welcome the fact that there's they're delving into the horrible nuances that come from that. And you can tell that this is from a writing staff where there are people. I mean, James Wong, is an Asian American who I imagine his family has had to go through similar things in America. These are people who understand what it's like to have been discriminated against. There's just an honesty here. And James Morrison and the actress who plays Winslow both handle the scene quietly. Yeah. It's not over-emotional, but there's...
with dignity.
Deeply emotional. With dignity. But what did you think about the reveal of this backstory for McQueen, because this really does shift how you look at the guy.
And how to explain why I didn't believe that he previously had a wife. And the reason that I rejected it when we were first told, I think, is because of the way that this often goes in other things. So I didn't want them to fall into this trap, which they didn't. But I was worried that it was going to be, and now we give you this detail because it's going to matter for this episode and then never matter again. Or we're bringing this up and she's going to come into the show. Like, I was worried that it was going to be something stupid like that. Of, we've... Spock has a brother, didn't you know?
Spock has a secret sister who's the lead of Star Trek Discovery. You didn't know that? She inspired him to become Spock because she called him a half-breed one time.
And like that.
See, bigotry does motivate you to become heroes. See, that's actually a great example of a series that played around with sci-fi allegory to comment about real-world harms, and did so in a way that was completely ill-defined and tone-deaf. Where in the Star Trek Discovery series, Michael Burnham as a little girl called her adoptive brother a half-breed one time, and it motivated him, it hurt him so bad that it motivated him for the rest of his life to become the hero that we know as Mr. Spock. And it's like, it's just that simple, is it? Oh, it's just like that? That's just how bigotry, that's how that works, huh? It's just like, that's it. It's just, there's nothing more to it than just that. And that's why when there's that truly devastating exchange and the acting is quiet, like I said, but it's so charged with emotion without the actors having to overtly emote, where he says that his wife didn't want to have kids with him.
She came to me one day and said she would not conceive a child by any artificial means. She would not subject her child to those words, those feelings.
But the child wouldn't have been an in vitro. Artificial insemination has been around for a century.
She knew that. She knew I knew it.
She doesn't want to have a kid with McQueen because then there will still be a stigma there because the kid's father will be a tank anyway. And so she uses excuses.
She doesn't want to have an in vitro child.
Because it still wouldn't be human, quote unquote. And even though Winslow lays out, well, that's crazy. It's been around for this many years and that's not how it works. And it's like, she knows that, and she knew that I knew that.
Yeah.
But
this was like...
And then he had to ask himself, am I a father? Am I someone who could be a father? And I know the answer to that. Yeah. And then he looks out the window.
It was the out that she was looking for. And I think he accepted that she needed out of the marriage, and that because she was warned. He said, it's going to be hard. It's going to be like this. And she thought that love could conquer it, is the way that I read into it. Because he doesn't really speak on her behalf. He speaks of his experience and his beliefs about the situation.
There's a sadness for me with that story with his former wife, that the hatred of others ruined the love between the two of them.
Yeah.
That she was idealistic and thought that seeing her partner have slurs thrown against him and treated less as a lesser than. Again, it's all about being treated lesser than. Wouldn't affect her because she loved him and that's what mattered. But realistically, that's not how the world works. That's not enough.
You don't live in isolation. And if you live in a place, and it seems to be the case all over the world, where tanks are second-class citizens at best.
This isn't the idealism of Star Trek. This isn't a world where she can be with him, and then if people don't like him, then she can give a little speech, and then it doesn't matter because she still loves him, and that's enough. This isn't that. That isn't the world that this takes place in. And I think it's important to note that down because this was the age of television where, in science fiction terms, Star Trek was the gold standard. Star Trek is what was expected.
Yeah.
One of the many things...
The aspiration was to be like Star Trek.
Was the expectation.
Yes.
Babylon 5 and Space Above and Beyond and a couple of others...
break from that mold.
Not only was I going to say that they break from that mold and they have their own thing, but they are often overlooked or looked less favorably because they aren't Star Trek. And for a lot of people, Star Trek is, for science fiction television, what science fiction television is. It's like, well, if it isn't like that, then is it really worth watching? Is often a thing that is thrown their way, and that's ludicrous. It's completely absurd, but it did happen a lot.
Some people do just want the thing over and over and over again.
And they know...
And we as people don't get that.
My own mother doesn't really like Space Above and Beyond because she finds it too grim and dark and not as hopeful and optimistic as Star Trek. And then she goes on to talk about how she wishes that it could be a little bit more like this. And what she keeps describing is Star Trek things.
Yeah.
Because that's what science fiction TV is. Even though she has problems with Star Trek, she's not even a big Star Trek fan. She's a big Space 1999 fan. That's her show of choice. But that's what I'm saying, especially in this era, that really did drag a lot of these shows down. But for fans of these shows, that's what actually made them strong, is this interaction. His life and what his life continues to be isn't tied up in a neat little bow like how TNG would do many times over. This isn't just Data will be, oh, Bruce Maddox, I don't appreciate your racism against me, but I don't have feelings, so it doesn't really hurt my feelings because I have none. It's like, oh, well, aren't we all, can't we all be like Data where we see things so wonderfully, beautifully, because we also have like a childlike wisdom to the world. Hey, Cooper Hawkes is kind of like that, right? Where he has like a innocent childlike wonder, but no, he doesn't actually. Like, yes, he doesn't know what Christmas is, but he does know that people are jerks.
Yeah, he's naive to the ways of the world, not the brutality of it.
The world of Space Above and Beyond is moving. It's shaken. There are plans.
Yes.
The military
The big offensive is on hold.
Oh, what was it? Operation Roundhammer? I'm pretty sure the name of it was. And we find out that the Chigs know all about it. They know. They've been watching us for a very long time.
It makes so much sense. Because I think all the way back to, like, episode 1 or maybe even the pilot, when they do a classic bait and switch because they already know the humans' tactics and they use that against them because they're like, oh, they'll never suspect this. And it's just like their whole plan was based on the assumptions that they would in fact do that one thing. So it's just like, well, yeah, of course they do.
We'll talk about Elroy in a second, but just since we're touching upon one of the informations he gives there, I gotta be real, even though I've seen the show and I know where things are going forward, I was taken aback with that reveal of, the Chigs. Not only do they know the plan currently, because obviously, but they've been watching for a very long time. How long is long? How long is long?
The vagueness of that is perfect. Because you can mine that line for so long.
Super long. And up until now, we've been very much on the impression that once we left Earth and ventured out into the stars, that's when the Chigs noticed us. Whether it's when we made colonies on those planets, but definitely the overall feeling that we've been given is very much, again...
Why would they care about a non-space faring
race? Yeah. And that's a Star Trek thing, right? Where it's like, once you go to the stars and you have warp technology, that's when
pre-warp societies are left alone.
And that's when we'll notice you, blah, blah, blah. And here it's like we've been led to believe, like, once we started to journey out beyond our comfort zone, that's when the aliens noticed us and proceeded to kick us down back to where we were. And they aren't happy. But now we're given this information that maybe they've been looking a little longer. Maybe they've been having an inspection about us for quite that time. And,
were they how long were they waiting? Not just how long were they watching, but how long were they waiting to do something or waiting to see something? There's so much you can get out of that one line, and the way that he delivers it also adds to what you can get out of it. And it's just so fucking satisfying.
This is a very satisfying episode. We even have with all of the McQueen stuff, we still have time for a mystery of who's sabotaging the missile that Sewell and his company Aerotech are trying to develop with Sewell fuel, which Sewell
died.
R.I.P. Sewell. We will miss you always. I loved him. He was so sleazy.
Sewell fuel, because that was like the only.
It's in a constant state of explosion right now in space, because we do get a payoff to that, which is the guy who does fly the 58th in McQueen's place, because they say no to McQueen. He gets shot.
It doesn't work.
He gets shot immediately, and he explodes, and this big explosion that keeps generating in space. And I loved that. That was such a great detail that. It's just constantly exploding. So that guy's just getting obliterated a lot, and that's funny. That's funny. That's funny. And he's atomized, getting atomized and atomized. It's very funny. It's very amusing. But we have a silicate, and not just any old. Well,
Leroy.
Let me ask you this. Did you have any idea who the saboteur was? Did you have any inkling? Did you think it was going to be a silicate? Did you think it was somebody on the 58th or Saratoga? What was your thoughts?
It was going to be a Chig.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
They're big.
Yeah.
Hard to crawl around the air ducts.
Yeah. But when we first saw the hand on the outside of the ship, I thought that it was going to be a twig, and then I was like, oh, wait, as we get more information.
You said a twig. A twig.
Would you like me to do that?
No, a chig. But go on. You were saying you thought it was a chig because you have just this silhouetted image, and we're so used to them being hidden like that.
It's it's a shady figure. It's going to be one of the villains. And it was just a different species of villain. It
was our friends, the silicate.
It was our friends, the
El Royale.
Yeah. I was like, oh wait, of course it is, when they pull up the cover, and it's him.
I didn't expect it to be Chucklebot, because I'm so used to all the other silicate, because
of the
lady
way,
one.
Because of the way that they've played around with Wang's torture.
Yeah,
That's why I was immediately like, yes,
I was happy to see him. Why was this one creepier than the one that tortured Wang?
How? Like, it's like, how are you managing?
Lots of licking of the lips from this one.
Yes, but often that has the adverse effect for me when, like, even though, like, you know, this wasn't the first thing, but it's the thing that comes to mind of Heath Ledger as the Joker.
Joker baby.
And the way that he does that, like, a lot of
this actor plays a lot of creeps. He's very good at being a creep. Very skilled at the creep factor. I was happy to see him again. I loved it. He straight up called McQueen a war criminal for torturing him and breaking treaties and codes. I love it when shitty evil villains try to play like, you can't break the rules. See, I'm invoking this thing that you know that we would not invoke for you if it was the other way around.
And we actively
don't. Yeah, I love that.
Wang's experience. He's like right there.
I know.
And Elroy's like, oh no, that wasn't me though.
That wasn't me though. You can't get angry at me for what another model did. And this is a thing that I find rather intriguing about the silicates. And if they had more time to expand upon them, how far would they go with humanizing them and or giving them more of an individuality? Because one of the reasons I bring that up is there is a level where you are supposed to feel confronted by the fact McQueen does the things he does to this silicate.
That he crosses those lines.
He crosses those lines, but with where the silicates are at currently, with what we know about them, even within this episode where he accesses in the cloud memory banks the previous Elroy, it has that thing where they're in the in-between, right? Where where the silicates feel like they're sentient and alive, but then you're very, very harshly reminded that no, they're just robots that have no individual. They don't have an individuality even.
There's a different shade cast on it when you think about the fact that these are two people that we see as fully fledged characters that neither of them are recognized as being human. Neither of their lives are worth the same.
Yeah.
As Wang's. Like, the loss of Wang would be seen and felt more heavily
than the silicate. Yeah, and they even treat the silicate like a toy.
McQueen,
They, like, take him down to the shop and fiddle around with him.
Yeah,
and
that dehumanization that comes with discrimination a lot of the time. And the fact that it's McQueen, a victim of discrimination, doing it against somebody else. But we still feel like he's justified in that action because, well, that person's evil.
This really reminds me of what Battlestar Galactica played around with, where the Dean Stockwell Cylon, he very much is what the silicates are like, where he was Mr. I'm a robot, like, I am not a human. I am my own thing. I'm a machine. I love the abilities of being a machine and forging my own path. And if I have to destroy all of these filthy humans to do that, awesome. And that's what the silicates are very much like. But I appreciate when they have to play up the, oh no, I have rights. I'm alive. I have feelings. And yet when they try to also get away with, that all of that's inconsequential to me. Those are silly human things. We only care about winning. And that's what matters to us.
It's the gamble.
We team up with the Chigs because they appreciate what we are.
And also, we want to fuck over you.
And we hate you. So, screw you. I love the silicates. They are such a fun antagonistic Force.
That's such a cool idea.
This
Just
episode,
that one shift in code.
This episode is jam-packed. It's such a tight 45 minutes, but it gets everything in there.
They are firm yet fair.
How did the chicks know about the missile?
Oh, they are very experienced at watching you. Yes. They've done it for a long, long time. Oh, you wouldn't believe how long. They know about your big plans. Your massive offensive, yes. But their alien fighter will take care of that.
The chaplain. Wow. Him trying to confront and comfort McQueen with what he knows.
Make peace with your maker.
Why would I do that? He was just some geek in a lab coat. Oh, don't you remember, Chaplain? This guy isn't a creation of God. He's a creation of man. What does that say about God? Like, we haven't even touched on that really too heavily in the show about religion, even though we've had this chaplain character a few times, and there are some characters with some kind of religious backgrounds to them. But when you have a world where tanks exist, what's God? You know, we're creating life now, and we're subjugating them, and it's just a whole thing. But can I talk about my actual favorite moment of the episode? The moment that I lost it the most in a way that was pleasurable?
Nope, you can't.
Okay, so no, here it is. It has to be said, Ross and McQueen.
What does he say about going to his funeral?
I'll be a son of a bitch if I'm going to your funeral. And of course, McQueen has a very quick-fire retort to that about, yes, you will be, but we'll talk about the state of your mother when I come back.
Yes!
And that makes Ross crack up. That was just seeing Ross.
It breaks through
Mm-hmm.
so many layers between these two characters with the way that they riff on each other, and it just feels so true, and that's so hard to do. It's so hard to get that style of banter that's been built through years of friendship, and for you to buy it as a viewer.
It is. I salivate every time the show gives us a little window into Ross being just a real human, like a guy.
Yeah.
Because he is the top dog that we have to deal with. He's very good at being the military man, but when we whack out the guitar, or when he talks about this and he smiles at what people say, and you see him crack that mask he has on, I love it every single time. Tucker Smallwood barely gets anything to do in this episode, but he makes his presence felt so strongly. I missed him when he wasn't here.
Not in a way that draws attention away from other characters.
It adds.
It's not a Rick Mail guest spot situation.
Oh, where he takes the spotlight and it's glorious? No. Tucker Smallwood is always contributing to everybody else. And that is his strengths as an actor in general throughout his career. Rarely, if ever, is he the lead. He is always he's usually a supporting actor, and that's the role. You are supporting. You are supporting the others. You are supporting the story, the theme, the message.
Yeah, he's a secondary
player, and I adored just the little banter between the two of them.
It's so wonderful. This episode is a yum yum for me.
Yum yum.
Oh, it's a yum yum from me.
Yum yum.
I rate this very highly. The one last topic that I want to discuss.
Okay.
One last, because we could keep going for hours on this, because there's so many scenes, so many wonderful
little
moments.
details.
The drinking of the chiggy blood is wonderful, but we have to talk about the actual fight between McQueen.
It's stunning.
Right?
Like, it should not look as good as it does. Like, you feel the weight of these two spacecrafts, which is a really interesting problem that they have, because you feel the weight of them, but they're not heavy ships. This isn't the Saratoga. It's not a cargo ship going through
and it's
space
not their transport. And it's not their little transport ships that they take down to the planet, which are bulky.
It's two very maneuverable, agile ships fighting each other with very expert pilots at the helm of each of them, and it has the right amount of weight where it's like, yes, this is several tons of metal, but it glides.
In spaceship battles, oftentimes, Star Trek, Babylon 5 does this from time to time, Battlestar as well, it is either submarine battles in space or airplanes in space. There is just a certain degree of movement that is used.
So what can they model?
What can they do?
What physics do they know?
And how much are they going to be realistic to what spaceships could probably do, and how much are they going to just make it sci-fi magic for TV? But there's always a thing to me now. Babylon 5 gets the closest to this, where they really have the 3D maneuvering stuff. And
yeah, it's like space is 3D.
Really great. And Battlestar as well. But there's always a level of stiffness and slowness, and you have to spin around, and it's always kind of a clunky thing. And that's an appeal of its own. But Space Above and Beyond is really the first show I can think of where where a spaceship, specifically the Chig ship, flies how I imagine spaceships would fly in space if they were an advanced ship, where the Chig ship is constantly spinning, rotating, flipping around, going from you could barely track where you see McQueen struggling to keep on his tail because he's just ziplining everywhere because it's flying around. Here's how I would demonstrate it. And I don't mean this in a disrespectful way. I mean this in a genuine way. When you see a little kid playing with a airplane toy or a spaceship toy, and they're just waving it about everywhere, that's how it flies around. But there's a deliberate maneuvering to it all. But I loved the fight because of how controlled and chaos it was. McQueen had to steer his ship and try and match it, and you saw it was hurting him to do it, and we see the ear bleed later, but you can see the Hammerhead ships are not made to accommodate those twists and turns that the Chig ones are.
It makes you really feel two things at the same time, which is how fucking good of a pilot McQueen is, because we haven't seen that.
We've only heard.
We've been told.
And the fact that he was the only one that survived the massacre tells us something too, but we never see it until now. But
also, that is true, and so is he's outmatched.
This is an advanced ship with an amazing pilot from a species that can withstand all of these things.
Yeah.
I think about how in the behind the scenes of Space Above and Beyond, they had a guy design all of the human stuff, and they on purposely got another person to design all of the alien stuff and made sure neither one of them communicated to each other.
Yeah.
So you got a real sense of division from the aliens and the humans and how they operate. And I really felt that in the spaceship battles where, okay, these chick ships can do all of these things, but they can't do these things, while McQueen can do these things, but he can't do these.
Yeah.
There's not as if and we see this because McQueen wins, but it's not as if the Chigs, just because they're an advanced alien civilization, means that they are always going to be better and that they have all of the same things we do and more. There are things that they have more, but things that they don't have that we have. And that's just how military battles go. Like, these tanks over here for the Germans, they have these things that are better than the American tanks, but the American tanks have these things that are better than the German tanks, and
also
the Japanese airplanes can do this.
He has these sort of skills, but McQueen has these ones. And, like, you see the difference in their tactics through the battle, and it amazed me when we finished this how much I was like, my heart was in my throat watching that. And usually I couldn't give a flying fuck about a CG spacecraft battle.
The fact that we left it to the end because all of the other stuff was just so much to dig into says a lot. But I do get a lot out of CG sci-fi ship battles.
Yeah.
I love them, and a lot of sci-fi fans love them. I know a lot of Space Above and Beyond fans really appreciate those fights, whether it is on the ground or in the hammerheads. We all love the hammerheads. They're such wonderful designs, and they can shoot behind them, which none of these ships in these shows ever can really shoot behind them. They have to spin around or dodge, but the hammerheads can.
Well, they have
a turret on the back.
Secondary shooting bay that like somebody else is in, and that's the gunner.
But no, they're gunner. Yeah, that's a great way to describe that. But I get a lot out of it, as do many people. But it should never be a substitution for the story itself when it comes to these.
It's
because
and not a instead.
We know this. When we cover Star Trek Discovery and they have that as a substitution to any development of character, metaphor, allegory, or theme, it is a mess. Just because you can have glorious CGI creations of spaceships flying around and shooting lasers and having action set pieces doesn't mean you should. So when Space Above and Beyond did it here, it was earned because they built up to it. They gave you all of the reasons to care about why McQueen was doing this. They gave you all the reasons to care about Winslow meeting her fate. And she wasn't one of the main characters of this series. She was just someone that has been here a couple of times.
It wasn't crammed into this episode. But if you watch just this episode, you would understand everything that you need to understand.
Oh yeah, it is this and Who Monitors the Birds are the very high quality episodes that you can just watch on their own and you will understand things.
Yeah.
But they both benefit from knowing the ongoing continuity of character as well as just
the
lore.
Context enriches.
So that is our discussion on the Angriest Angel. The next episode that we'll be talking about is Toy Soldiers?
Yes.
Toy Soldiers, I do know a plot point of this.
Oh, okay.
I saw it last time when we were looking over stuff, and I'm like, oh, that's that episode, okay. But with yourself, Toy Soldiers, is it Toy Soldier or Toy Soldiers?
I'm pretty sure it's plural.
Okay, so what do you get out of Toy Soldiers?
My guess is entirely baseless. I think it's going to be about Cooper.
How so?
I don't know. Like, I just feel like it's going to be Cooper related. And I feel like the 58th are going to be the toy soldiers of the bigger war, as they often are. Like, they're often the ones that are sent in first, or to the most dangerous situations. Like, they just keep on finding themselves on the front line of this war, even though, like, interplanetary.
Yeah, your statement there, for some reason, I don't know why this has popped into my head.
Okay.
I did not expect this to be something that came out of my mouth during this discussion, but it reminds me of the Doctor Who arc, the serial for Patrick Troughton, was it War Games? One of his, I think it's his final one, where they're thrown into these war games and they're having to deal with them. That type of vibe is what you're dropping there.
Yeah.
Well,
that's one guess.
One guess. The other guess, you're allowed one other guess.
Oh,
just one. Sorry. You drank too much before we recorded, so we don't have the time for you to try and remember a third option. So what's your other option for what toy soldiers could be about?
West's kid brother.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, you think you'll see him again, do you?
That's my quick guess.
Yeah, they've mentioned him a couple of times, so you could get that happening. That's it's been a little while since we've had a touch base with West. It's been a few. What about a Damfu episode? We haven't, we could. I always want to keep giving Damfu more episodes because sadly she's been giving not very good ones. So can we please give her a good one?
I just feel like we're not going to get more of her. And I like.
Oh, you never say never.
No, but I don't know the show.
I know.
That's just my guess. I feel like she's just going to be shafted.
You thought the same with Wang to begin with.
I know, and I hope that I'm wrong, but that's just what I'm thinking about at the moment.
That's it, right?
That is us. This was a very Yum Yum episode of Space Above and Beyond. And thank you to those people who are listening to this first on our Patreon.
We have a Patreon where we make bonus content, including discussing Space Above and Beyond. If you're listening to this on the main feed, we've already discussed the entire run, and you can listen to all of it right now by heading over to our Patreon, and you'll find so much other stuff. But we are on the social medias under YumYumPod or YumYumPodcast. If you have not rated and reviewed the podcast, you should do that right now. You should raise your glass of chiggy blood in the air and give us a toast to how glorious of a podcast we are for you. We would love to read that review and go, wow, they did it. They did the thing that we told them to do. And then Rachel and I can high five in our private time. You don't get to see that or hear that, but we just know if you write a review for our podcast on whatever podcasting site you use, Rachel and I, we're going to high five about it. We're going to give each other some skin about that. I don't know why that got the reaction from Rachel there. No one will know.
I was going to make a comment and then just went, okay, that's over.
That's over now. Thank you.
Is that the end of the episode there, Ryan?
You decide.
But you're the one that ultimately has control because you edit these.
Here's the pegs.